So this Trudeau elbowing people business. Well, I've been fairly, fair as in fair play. Critical of Trudeau, supportive when justified, but dismissive when warranted as well. So don't interpret this as a partisan liberal reaction. It isn't. I identify as an anarchist. I'm really to the left of the entire spectrum. Frankly, I'd more readily identify as a supporter of the NDP, although I'll admit I have been voting Liberal regularly for the last 4 or 5 years as well. What you see in this video is actually a big part of the reason why, and I'll post the link to it. This is the accurate analysis of the situation, which is that the NDP basically set the thing up. Okay? And it's not isolated behavior from the NDP either. We've seen this kind of thing over and over again. But here's the thing, these tricks don't work. Since the NDP started with this shit, they've been nosediving. I wouldn't expect the outcome of this to be any different. People are going to look at this and laugh, okay? It's really not unlike the setup around Trump's manager being charged with assault, which clearly helped Trump when the evidence got out. And anybody with any critical thinking skills could see that nothing actually happened. To put it another way, Trudeau's elbow on Brousseau may have been accidental, but Brousseau's resulting sucker punch on Trudeau was entirely conscious. And there was much intent there. The reality is that Canadians are actually pretty smart. We have a good track record with this sort of thing, and most of us will figure this out. Those of us who refuse to figure it out will simply refuse to figure it out, right? It's some of that cognitive dissonance that people like to talk about. And I was thinking about the elbowgate thing as I was eating and watching a Richard Wolff lecture. And I think there's another dynamic to this that is being missed and should be really have some attention drawn to it. It's also a theme I went back to repeatedly during the last Canadian election, so I have some personal continuity in the commenting. It's just another example of the difference between old media and new media, and more evidence that the media as a whole has still not clued into the new reality of things. I've been making the argument that they need to start handing out pink slips. Nobody's going to starve to death here, but it's really getting beyond ridiculous, beyond surreal, and to the point of almost being dangerous. I don't mean to pick on Peter Bransbridge, for example, but maybe it's time to go home when the son of the guy you started off covering gets elected. The reality is that the way the media is covering this is like it happened 20 or 30 years ago, before we had this thing called the internet. And let's be crystal clear. The internet is not a new thing. It's well past the point where the old folks can complain that the world is passing them by. It's to the point where if you're still operating under TV rules, you are simply out of touch. And you need to take stringent courses in new media, or just be set up to pasture. I'm sorry, but it's true. These panels that you get with, these old people that are close to or beyond retirement age are not just useless, but are approaching a point of dangerous anachronism, less because they're out of touch, and more because so few people seem to realize it. Maybe it's kind of a bubble, but they seem to take themselves seriously. 20 years ago, the way people would have seen the encounter would have been framed by a handful of media sources. Corporate media would go to town with it, more out of a desire to boost ratings than anything else. The state-run media and a handful of moderate sources would have set the record straight, but you'd still be reliant on their filtering, their narrative. And if they decided they didn't want to show you the video, you wouldn't see the video. Today, the way people are going to experience the exchange is something more like this. They'll read a headline or hear somebody talking about it or something, it's like, Trudeau elbows MP. And they go, whoa. And before they even read an article about it, they'll immediately go to YouTube to find footage of it. In fact, they're probably even hoping that they get to see the Prime Minister pile drive some hapless MP. It's the Googling the action. It's the headline that says that the Prime Minister knocked somebody out, and they want to see footage of it, right? That's the initial point of engagement. And then they're going to be either relieved because they didn't really want to see the Prime Minister knock someone out, or disappointed because they did, by the anticlimactic video evidence, which demonstrates that it was a non-issue, right? And then they're going to mumble that it's just more media bullshit and put it in the list of reasons you shouldn't trust media. So you don't get the framing of a narrative, you don't get to control a narrative, you just make yourself lose credibility, you make yourself look stupid, okay? But that's not what you're getting from the mainstream media. It is what you're getting from independent media, and note that disparity. It's basically the new MSM for people under, it's 2016. the independent media is where people under 50 get their information from nowadays. Okay, you're gonna wake up one day around 2025 and realize that old media is really an idiosyncrasy of the baby boomer generation and will disappear with them. Okay, it wasn't there before them. It won't be there after them. It will disappear with them and their influence. But the new media hasn't been able to interpret itself as illegitimate yet, so it's still in this phase where it's reacting. It's still letting the old media define the narrative and then going out of its way to debunk it rather than trying to create its own narrative. And that's something that we're going to have to see change in the next upcoming couple of years. When the new media puts the old media to bed finally, right? It's not the only situation over the last few years where situations seem outright bizarre, and the disconnect seems to be over the question of old and new media. One prominent example was the collapse of Jeb Bush. He just focused too much on old media. There was no focus on the internet. I didn't see a damn thing about Jeb Bush on the internet, and because I don't watch TV, that's the only media I get. The only thing I ever heard from Jeb Bush was the police clap video. I hadn't heard any, he was running a phantom campaign. I didn't hear anything good about him. I didn't hear anything bad about him. It was just nothing at all. And then the police clap video came up, and it was, oh yeah, Jeb Bush is running. All the media that I saw was about Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, who, in the end, were the ones that were sitting there. In fact, I believe Trump stole his domain name. It was ridiculous, right? Total incompetence. It's the only way you can really make sense of both the MSM analysis and the NDP's tactic here. They have to be assuming they can control the narrative by controlling access to information. That has to be what they're thinking, okay? That if we create this fiasco, we present it in a specific way, then, the stupid voters won't be able to see through it on their own. They'll only know what we tell them. That has to be what they're thinking. And so they have to be completely out of touch with reality, okay, and just ready to be told to go home. Because that's not the way the world works anymore, okay? And if they weren't completely out to lunch on this, then everybody from the top down, from the left to the right, would have to realize that essentially everybody that cares at all is going to take the 10 seconds it requires to Google the event, see it for themselves, make their own choice, and realize, oh, wait a second, this is complete nonsense. I'm being lied to, okay? It's one thing for people to be mistaken. Everybody makes a mistake. It's another to feel like you're being manipulated. Okay? And that's why the NDP lost. Because they were doing this kind of thing. And it was just openly transparent. And I don't think that anybody really in the Liberal Party even realizes this. I don't think Trudeau realizes it either. But he has this sort of childlike naivety to him that makes him seem innocent, okay? And when you create this juxtaposition, this contrast between what comes off as this conniving, manipulative, controlling NDP run by these, nefarious puppet masters, right? And when you contrast that with, what looks like a kid that's being fucked around with, it creates this kind of dynamic that very much favors Trudeau. Okay, and you're seeing this with a lot of people that are traditional NDP supporters. They're looking at the situation and they're saying it's flipped upside down, right? Because most of my life, it's not the NDP that's associated with these tactics. It's the Liberals that are associated with these tactics. And in fact, Trudeau's father was the master of these sorts of tactics. Now, I'll acknowledge that I could be being, suckered by a good actor. And Trudeau was a drama teacher. I'd say that his acting in the debates doesn't suggest he's such a great actor. Just the way that he was doing his speeches made him come off as less than a thespian. I'll say that. But I mean, there's a possibility that I and many other people are getting tricked. That maybe Trudeau doesn't isn't such a naive little boy after all. But I think that the balance of evidence suggests that that's probably unlikely, and that a big part of what you're seeing in Canada, with the Liberals controlling so much of the traditional left, and so much of the traditional left abandoning the NDP wholesale at both levels, has a lot to do with this reversal of perception, right? The whole attraction of the NDP is that, they're the moral conscience of the nation. They're just good people trying to, fight against a corrupt system. But when they flip things around and they make themselves look like the corrupt ones, and the Liberals look like they're innocent, even when people know that it's not probably really, accurate or reflective of reality, it sure seems that way, right? And you end up making these lesser evil decisions where you say, okay, well, the Liberals, I know what I'm getting here. I know I'm voting for the banker party, but damn it, the NDP have, they've gone down the rabbit hole. They've lost it, right? They elected a conniving liberal, and they've become conniving liberals. So this is exactly the reason the NDP have had so much trouble. And rather than learn from it and change, they seem to be doubling down on it. And, contrary to the analysis of the media dinosaurs, the old Tory clique that is still in control of the media here and has been since Mulrooney, despite what they're saying, I think that if the NDP continues to try, to go down this, old media, manipulative kind of path, they have a long road to irrelevance in front of them. That Naomi Klein won't even save them from. That's gonna, if she does come in here and try to pick up the pieces, that's gonna have to be the first thing she does. Is drop the bullshit. It's not helping.